Hi, I'm Deontay.
And I'm LaMika.
And this is our channel.
Carrolls Ever After. Today's topic is all about our wedding and your wedding. So we're going to talk a little bit about our special day. We've had people to inquire, how did we come up with that idea? A lot of people in our wedding shared how unique, intimate, and memorable our day was. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what happened for those of you who missed it, to give a quick recap. And you can also take a look at our video of our very special day, which should be linked down below in the description box. And then we're also going to give a couple of tips to make that process with you and your spouse a little bit easier in terms of talking through and working with one another to have a very special day that is memorable for the both of you, and is a reflection of your values and personality as a couple. So a little bit about us, and then hopefully you can spend the rest of the time focusing on you and your special day. So what was our theme? Look behind us. Carrolls Ever After, a Black love story. We care about a lot of different things. The Carrolls Ever After bit, we were trying to find the right play on words. You know, everybody justified their hashtag. And Carrolls Ever After just stood out because it's been such a journey, a very dynamic journey to get to the place that we were when we were getting married. And that, you know, people say happily ever after. Happiness does not capture what you need to live a meaningful and sustainable marriage. It's even more than that. And it's about your identity. It's about what you're fighting for and what you're protecting. And that is our identity as a couple. So Carrolls, our family unit, Carrolls Ever After. That resonated in a different kind of way. In a Black love story, or what we've called a dope Black love story. Our Blackness is very near and dear to us. Like, we embrace it. It's beautiful. Black love, I mean, all love is beautiful, but we're talking in particular about our own identities, and one of those being the fact that we are Black Americans. And so we just want to honor our Blackness and our African ancestry, though we're not first or second generation African Americans. You know, we do have African ancestry, and so different things, like even our attire, we wore kente, custom made kente, because it's absolutely beautiful. That's one example. And
you had everybody dressed in all white
in solidarity as representing our
tribe. Yeah.
Not just my side of the family wore lilac and his side of the family wore silver.
No,
everybody.
And there was a lot of intentionality because we wanted everybody to be uniformed. You know, be comfortable summertime, but we were the only ones, me, her, and the kids were the only ones that were going to look different. And even if you watch the video, a lot of people didn't know what the attire for the bride and groom were going to be. So they just thought that everybody, including the bride and groom and the kids, were going to wear all white. But no. And even if you look at the background and how we had everything set up, everything just fit, like this whole sea of white and this whole sea of people. Yes, white, I guess you could say, represents purity and all those kind of wonderful things, but it was supposed to be vibrant, bring the joy.
We were supposed to come forward and stand out.
Yeah. And also because there was a picture at the end that was going to look really cool with us standing in the sea of white of everybody behind us.
We did a really big group picture
at the very end.
At the very end
of the wedding.
And we stood in the front, and so being surrounded by them, you didn't see just my family or just his family. You saw our unit, like those who are keeping us, covering, protecting us, supporting us, all around.
And our wedding was probably one of the shortest weddings that I've ever heard of. Our wedding,
it's usually like a half-day's event or a full day's event.
Our wedding was from like 2, and people were walking out of the door to like 3:45.
Yeah, like 4:30ish.
Yeah.
People, we were done.
We didn't want all the pomp circumstance. We had already been married before,
And it made it easier because we've been married before to understand
what matters.
The importance of having a very special, intimate ceremony. Was it large?
No. I think the most we had was about 60 to 70 people. And we had it in her parents' living room.
Which they have a large
So when you see the video, you think that we rented a house. No, we had it in a family house. And cut out the cost,
facility.
Right? And so we had it in the living room, and everybody was sitting, you know, in the chairs across from each other. And it was very, very intimate, very special. We didn't have things lined up the way that you probably would at a regular wedding, like the lighting of the candles. We had special prayers special promises to each other's children that we brought to the marriage. We had Talib cover us, as you'll see in the video, to where it kind of was symbolic of us being covered in prayer, and
which was very important because we're also very spiritual people. So that's one thing the sound does not capture. We love the Lord. We're very, very, very spiritual people. But we didn't want a traditional wedding. Like we were just like, I mean, we don't want to just like I have to on some off-white.
Yeah, it was beautiful. It was tasteful. We still
very intimate. People talk about it all the time.
People talk about it all the time. Like
they're like, I've never been to a wedding like that before.
People did not lose their Saturday.
They didn't.
Right? Because we did get married on a Saturday. People did not lose their Saturday.
The time was so well spent. Every single thing that happened, people said they felt like everything was very intentional, and it was. And so we didn't do a lot of fluff type stuff, right? But everything that was included was like spot on and very intentional. And so you want to walk from the very beginning?
Go ahead.
Very beginning. So the first thing that happens, I think we asked people to arrive at like 1:30.
1:30.
By 1:30.
We didn't tell them it was gonna start at 2.
Yeah,
I think we
said
knew 1:30.
Yeah, something like that. And what we did was we said one of the priorities that for us was we already have children. We have responsibilities that are pre-existing. We are two different households that are merging into one household. We have some goals and priorities financially and otherwise over the next year, and immediately after we wanted to take a honeymoon for us, but we also wanted to go on a family moon so our children can blend and feel like they're celebrating. And so all those things had to be in mind. So we had to think about what our budget was and what was most important. Now we could have spent a lot of money on the wedding, but that wasn't really the most important thing to us. And so we did spend money, but the money that was spent was very intentional. And so we were able to keep things within a reasonable amount for what we wanted to do next. So from the beginning, instead of doing a reception and paying all this money per head per plate, we decided, hey, how about we do this? We're going to do heavy hors d'oeuvres in the very beginning. As people arrive, before the wedding even starts, there's going to be heavy hors d'oeuvres. And so we did have a caterer who's a great family friend to cater some items, and the difference, because we had that kind of relationship, the difference we were able to give her from we bought certain things from Costco, and we asked if she could also heat those things as well to include in the menu. But this was something we agreed on in advance with our caterer. You know, a lot of caterers, heavy hors d'oeuvres do not cost as much as you having a salmon dinner. Okay, and so you can do things like we had teriyaki meatballs on skewers, I want to say, chicken skewers. We had spring rolls. We had a lot of different easy to grab kind of foods that were also very yummy at the same time. We had tuna, I want to say tuna or chicken salad, little sliders, things that were not too heavy. You can put on a somewhat small plate.
The idea was not to give everybody a full course meal. We understood that it's a wedding. People want to be here for a little bit of time. So it was to kind of keep the appetite going, so that by the time you left, you weren't supposed to get fed or full there, but
you'll be out in time for dinner.
You'll be out in time for dinner.
After lunch, out in time for dinner.
Yeah.
And you're gonna have cake too, and the cake was the bomb.
I didn't get any of it.
Which is a sad situation. I still don't know how that happened exactly.
Didn't get any of it. It was so much.
Didn't we feed each other?
We fed each other a piece of cake, but that's not the same as saying I'm gonna have a piece of
so you
cake.
did taste it though.
I tasted a little bit.
Okay.
I tasted a little bit.
I was so upset. We began with a reception for like the first 30 to 45 minutes. And then after that, music started. Everyone was seated. They all had fans because, it's inside. And when that large of a number of people are in one space, even with the AC on, it can get a little warmer. And so reception, opening, like kind of reception, mix and mingle for people to get to know each other, see a slideshow of us and our wedding.
Something so interesting. Everybody who did something in the wedding, they were some kind of clergy.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. They were a preacher, an apostle, or somebody that was very, very significant in our relationship, that either supported us very heavily or they spoke some kind of prophetic utterance to help that day come to pass, because they allowed the Lord to use them.
So, reception. And then the first thing is the processional, and that processional included D, but it also included our boys, and each of our boys brought in an item, which you can see in the video, that was very special, like the tallit, like our Bible, and like the broom that we would jump. So they all felt special. And then beyond that, we did our some context for the day. I think the prayers came first or second. I can't remember.
The prayers came first.
Prayers.
Then the promises to the children.
Prayers over a couple of things, over
ministry.
Our ministry together, because as believers, any union, like, it merges your purposes, and so we, as a couple, you have some form of ministry, whether he's formally a preacher or not. Like, as a couple, you have a responsibility to the kingdom, and so praying over that and our purpose in God, and then praying over the blending of our family, and then praying over the rings, and then we also had our vows. And after the vows and jumping the broom, we, instead of having a big party and dancing and all the other stuff, everyone else got to watch us in our own intimate moment. So they turned on the music, and we danced, just the two of us, in front of our friends and family. And their like little commentary was so cute, which you might not hear all of in the video.
You can hear some of it in the video when you actually watch the actual video.
After that, we got a couple of photos. We left out for a big group picture on the lawn, came back in for a toast and cake, and it was done.
It was done.
And so it was all very intentional, but you had to see how it plays out. So watch the video. So how can you achieve this type of very special and very intimate day that like hits on every point that matters to you and your spouse to be on that day, and honors the both of you and what matters the most? How can you do that? Well, let's talk about it. Here's three simple tips, things that we did and in our own way, and that you all should also do as you're trying to figure out the best way to approach making your day meaningful for both of you.
So the first one is getting rid of the notion that it is only about the bride. So it's about the union, right? It's about the two people. It's about the fact that her world and my world are coming together. So what we both wanted is what matters. What mattered.
Yeah. And so, like, traditionally it's like everything is only about the bride, because she's the one who is being given, which still happens. My father did give me to D, but she is the one being given to this man to become a part of his household that they're establishing, which still is very beautiful and very powerful. But that does not mean that this day does not bear significance to him as well. And so getting out of your mind that only as the bride, what you want for the day is the only thing that matters. Not if you want your day to be a reflection. If you want your day to only be your day, that day to only be your day, do it that way. But if you want that day to be a reflection of you as a couple, people to gain unique insight into who you are, then you need to ensure that some of the things that matter to your husband to be are also honored. And honestly, it actually meant more to people seeing that play out than anything, because it was clearly not just me. It was about us. And they clearly walked away with that sentiment.
So the next point is to write a list of things that are very important to the both of you as it relates to how you want your wedding to be.
And so this is a play on the first part, right? So once you all align about the meaning of that day, the significance of that day, what does it mean to you two, right? Then you're able to dial down into some more logistical things. And so what we're encouraging you to do is sit and write a list, 5 to 10 things, get as close to 10 things as possible. Each of you do not talk about what's on the paper until after you have finished your list. And then you write down your list in no particular order. You go back and you rank, like you star your non-negotiables, right? You put the things that it's going to be really hard for me to let this go and not feel some sort of way, right? You put those things down. And if you have like a top 5, you make sure those are absolutely clear. Or your top 3, because he might have something on his list like regarding the size of the wedding, but it's number 9. And for me, it's number 2. And so understanding where that falls in the spectrum of priorities will help you all to negotiate without you feeling like, oh, she's just making it up that that's high on her list and it's not really high on the list. No, look at her list. This actually was high on her list. This was a non-negotiable item and it ranked in her top 3, right? But it ranked really low for you. And so some of the items that you want to put on that list are things like size.
How many people you want?
Yeah.
Do you want children there or not? You know, do you want it to be a long wedding? Do you want it to be traditional? Does that matter to you? Does certain things matter to you about the nuptials? And
where are you going to have it? Are you going to have it in a church or not in a church? Are you going to have it in the country or outside of the country in a destination? Are you going to go to a courthouse and then do just a reception?
How simple do you want it?
How simple? How grand? There are ways to merge all of those things.
A lot of couples frustrate themselves because they are not on the same page about the particulars of the ceremony.
And they dive right into doing stuff before they've had a meaningful conversation.
And a lot of times you find a lot of couples, the bride has all of these wonderful, fabulous ideas and the groom is not on the same page.
And sometimes the grooms don't care. They're just like, just do whatever. But we challenge you though here. We challenge you here. He does not have to be involved in every single nitty-gritty detail, but you do want to clearly understand what are some of the things that are incredibly important to him. And it might surprise you what it is. He might say, we absolutely have to have a videographer, or we absolutely have to have like we absolutely have to dance and have a DJ. You know, he might try and bust out with the electric slide, cha-cha slide, Cupid shuffle. You know what I'm saying? You don't know. You won't know until you talk about it.
Until you talk about it.
This eliminates arguments when it gets down to the line and closer to the moment. You're like,
and that leads to number 3. That leads to number 3. She talked about arguments. And sometimes the arguments, when it comes to planning the ceremony, doesn't happen as a result between the bride and the groom. Number 3 is don't allow anyone else to dictate what your day will look like. This is the first instance where you have to protect what's important to not only just you and your spouse, but also protect the decisions that you make. These are one of the first decisions that you'll ever make as a couple is how your wedding will look. And so what we mean by that is
all these well-intentioned people going to have bright ideas about what your day needs to be.
About what you should do for your wedding and where you should have it and the color schemes you should have. And
even though you and your spouse have already gone through the work of negotiating and agreeing and compromising to figure out the best way to honor both people.
So what that means is, let's get a little specific. Grandmama and them may have ideas and you love grandma to the hilt.
Yeah. And certain things may be easy to incorporate as long as it doesn't compromise what you agreed on.
What y'all agreed on.
Yeah.
Right. While it may be a good idea, grandma, mama, daddy, whoever it is.
We already talked about it.
We already talked about it, and this is what we wanted. And that's important because after that wedding, after that ceremony, it's you and your spouse against the world anyway, right? It's your house and what y'all build, right?
Practice.
And this is the first step to doing that. And sometimes couples lose all of who they are in their ceremony.
They
trying to be people pleasers and people.
It becomes everybody else's day but theirs.
So that's what we mean by making sure you protect.
Yeah.
Your ceremony.
It's important very early on have these conversations before you identify a coordinator. You need to be telling your coordinator what it is that you and your husband have agreed that you wanted.
And make sure you have, if you are going to have a coordinator, make sure you have somebody that's going to have y'all back to where if somebody tries to go to them and say it should be done this way, no. The bride and groom wanted this, and this is what's going to happen.
Which might mean you can't have a family member. It's okay. It's okay. You need to hire somebody that's not going to have a piece of have some familial bias. And that's all right.
It's all right.
That's all right. That's all right.
It's all right. The goal of this video is to help not only show you guys or tell you some of the things that we went through to put together our ceremony, but to help other couples who are getting ready to take that step to get married and you're trying to plan your ceremony. And there are some anxieties, there are some things and challenges that you face that we know about, that we are very much aware of.
And one final thing on that note is also, while you and your spouse may come up with a vision, it's important that whoever your officiant is going to be, that they are comfortable with whatever your plan is. Because sometimes when you go the traditional church house route, the officiants might lean into, because that's typically what they do. Depending on the officiant, I'm not gonna just lump everybody in and generalize, but in our experience, especially, he's a preacher, I've grown up in the church, in our experience, they tend to lean into a typical standard in terms of how weddings flow. They do allow for some minor nuances to the couple, but it might be more challenging to completely rework the flow of a wedding physically in a church. For whatever reason, something about being physically in the church. But you should talk to your officiant, because you never know. Talk to your officiant about it. It's possible that if you do it in a space that is intimate, like a familiar home or a really nice mansion that you rent, even ones that you can rent through Airbnb and VRBO. If your wedding is small enough, you can rent it through some of those HomeAway. HomeAway and PeerSpace, that's another website that we came across. So PeerSpace, those are just facilities that you can rent by the hour. HomeAway or VRBO, and of course like Airbnb, you can find different facilities that you might want to rent. But your officiant, whether they are a preacher or just licensed, you want to have a conversation very early on, especially if you're talking about doing something slightly different. You might have to,
And to add to that, be transparent with your officiant about what you want. Don't just have the conversation, but be transparent.
These are some of the things.
And I say that because your officiant might not be on the same page, and that means you need to take that time to find another officiant that won't mind adjusting based upon what your decisions are as a couple. Because the top of your list may have been to choose a specific officiant, but that officiant may not be comfortable doing the different things that y'all want to do in your wedding. And so you might have to find, and nothing worse than waiting to the last minute.
You don't want to find out the last minute.
Like that's why it's important to have this stuff drawn out from the jump as relates to between the two of you, so that when you do get down to the other details, y'all are on the same page about what you want. Y'all got to get other people on board with you all. So with that said, we pray that any and everybody who's getting married, man and woman that's getting married, we pray that the Lord gives you the desires of your heart to make your day special, to make it to not only what you want it to be, but what the Lord wants it to be as well. And we wish you guys nothing but the best.
Keep him at the center.
Keep him at the center.
That's the key.
And whatever y'all say goes. Remember that. Because it's y'all's wedding. Your wedding. Bad English. Your wedding.
It's our video.
It's our
video. We grown. We can do that.
And we hood.
Let's cut that out. Cut that out.
She never get this right. Tag.
Babe.
So let's do it again. Tag,
share, and
subscribe
to the channel.
And then hit that button, hit that bell
to turn on the notifications.
So that anytime we post something, it's going to pop up on your phone. All right. This is your favorite couple, Deonta and LaMika. We Carrolls.
Yeah, and again, if there are any topics that you want to see or any questions that you have, feel free to put it in the comments, and we will definitely respond in a timely manner.
Follow us on Instagram at Deonta Carroll, D-O-N-T-E, last name Carroll, C-A-R-R-O-L-L.
That's very easy.
One word.
And Mika Bear 88, MIKABEAR 88. Until next time.